established. I won't be up here too long as I've already said. If you'll flip to Exodus chapter 13 and beginning at the 17th verse. And we'll also be reading a couple of scriptures from chapter 14. But due to time's sake, I want to get this word out quick, fast, and in a hurry. We're going to drop it like it's hot. Don't worry, it's not going to be like that with the cash money, but we're going to drop that like it's hot in the house of the Lord today. And give you this random word, because God dropped this in my spirit when I was speaking back in December. But the word of the Lord reads in Exodus chapter 13, beginning at the 17th verse. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, "Least peradventure the people repent when they see war and return to Egypt." But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up, harnessed out of the land of Egypt. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn the children of Israel, saying, "God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry my bones away hence with you." You may be seated if you're standing. And for time's sake, we're just going to skip briefly through some of these spots here in chapter 14, just hitting a couple of key areas of emphasis. In chapter 14, verse 10, it reads, "And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord." And I suggest looking at verse 13 and verses 21 and 22, but due to time's sake, we're going to skip forward to verse 26. "And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hands over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hands over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength. When the morning appeared, the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overwhelmed the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And in verse 31, the Lord and when Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. I won't be here long, but we're going to speak from the subject matter of they can't swim. They can't swim. Now, there's some things that we face in life that can be challenges and can be tough for us to have to deal with. Oftentimes, a lot of people find swimming to be one of their greatest fears because they say in some racial groups, they can't swim. It's often associated that a lot of African Americans don't swim because they didn't necessarily grow up around swimming pools. They didn't necessarily go to the local country club, and they didn't necessarily get to spend time just out there swimming during the summertime. But in this situation, and oftentimes in our lives, we want to look at a couple of things. One, for the children of Israel, the people that couldn't swim were the Egyptians. The Egyptians had been tormenting and had bothered the children of Israel for a long time because they had been captive. They had been in prison and they had been enslaved. And I know that today's a very momentous day because it's not only the first Sunday in Black History Month. It's the first Sunday after our consecration. It's also Super Bowl Sunday for sports fans. But when we really look at the fact that it is a unique time and a unique space where so many things that are going on, so many challenges that are occurring, And we're facing some trials and some situations, even though we're just a little over 30 plus days into 2020. We still have some problems that may have followed us out of the past, out of 2019 into 2020. There may be still some people who have some mortgage problems or some mortgage issues that are going on in their family that they're like, you know what, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage or pay my rent. There's still some things going on where the repo man may be out there playing Operation Repo with somebody's car even right now. But you know what? There's still some of us who are dealing with family members who are sick or who are in the hospital. There's still some of us dealing with some things where we've got some mental issues going on, some issues going on in our families. The kids up here acting up, cutting the fool. Got your spouse up here where you up there like, you know what, I'm not feeling you right now. You want to go and let them have it. You want to lay hands on them and it ain't for prayer. You've got some issues going on where you're bumping heads with your siblings. You've got some issues going on in your job place and it's just like, man, if I was running this thing, I would turn this thing all the way around, upside down, and just put it all in the shredder. But I want us to just think for a moment about the fact, the issue that the children of Israel were dealing with. They were dealing with problems that had pursued them. They were dealing with some problems that they thought had been cut off. They thought they had some problems that had an expiration date. But they were looking back at a problem that they thought had expired, but their problem pursued them. Sometimes your problem will pursue you. But the great thing about problems is that they have an end point. Right. And sometimes, like if you go to the grocery store, every food item that you can order, it has an expiration date. Right. Look to your neighbor, and I'm not that guy that says turn to your neighbor every 5 minutes, but I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, it's got an expiration date. It's got an expiration date because there's some time for some things that have been bothering us, that have been hanging around for too long to just be cut off, to be eliminated. Because God has us moving forward to dry ground. He's got us moving forward to another season. We've got some things that have been trying to just rear their ugly heads up entirely too much. Now, these Egyptians had had the children of Israel in captivity for about 400 plus years. And in that time, generations had come and generations had gone. And the children of Israel kept on crying out for God to deliver them. And when God sent forth deliverance by sending plagues upon Egypt and tormenting their captors, then there was an expiration date for their time of being enslaved. Just like after that, many years later, and I'm going to pull in some black history, there was an expiration time for slavery because we did have the emancipation of those who were captive in the South who were slaves. Now, a lot of people who were trying to escape slavery before slavery had expired, they crossed over the Ohio River because the Ohio River was a demarcation line between the North and the South. It was not a border state like Kentucky, but it was the North. And when you got up to the North, you had reached freedom. You had reached a quote-unquote promised land, but you had to cross over that Ohio River to get to the other side. Now, the children of Israel, they had to get to the other side of the Red Sea. And it seemed as though it was going to be a long journey. And the Egyptians had come up out of nowhere to pursue them. So it's like, oh my gosh. I thought I left you in 2019. I think Ruben Studdard had a song one time talking about I'm sorry for 2004. Well, shoot, there's some years and some stuff I was pretty sorry for, and I don't want to remember it no more. I don't want it to come back to my remembrance. But it's a good thing that I have some things that are from my past. I have just enough memory so I can have a testimony. I have just enough memory so I can see clearly now that the rain has gone. Because God has some bright days on the horizon for us. even right now. Now, we've had problems that have tried to just come in like a flood in our lives, but the great thing is we've left those Egyptians behind and we crossed through on some dry ground. We left some stuff behind in our rearview mirror. And now we're standing on the shore and we're looking at the miracle of God that's going to transform our lives even from now and to push us and to boost us and to move us to another level. Greater Emmanuel, we have been on a consecration for the month of January for a reason. It wasn't for us to just go on and skip a couple of meals. I mean, some people, they may have just skipped meals, but if you were actually up there while you were on your hunger strike in January, we're up there fasting and praying and seeking God and spending some time with God, denying the flesh and taking upon the cross so that we can follow Jesus. Because there is something about the name of Jesus. It is the sweetest name. Hallelujah, Jesus. If we take upon that cross and we focus on Jesus, then we can get to the other side. And now we have to remember now that those problems and things that were coming after us, regardless of whatever it is, they cannot swim. They cannot make it out of the past. There was up there trying to build up a whole lot of just like, oh, you know what? You remember this thing. You remember when you were up there fornicating. You remember when you were up there committing adultery. You remember when you were up there backbiting. You remember when you were up there talking about all those who were around you. You remember when your situation seemed as though it was too much. When it seemed as though all hell was rising, coming, and just up against you in every way, shape, form, or fashion. But then the Lord God got you put up to the other side. And then he drowned your enemies right before you because he sent forth a miracle. God has some miracle signs and wonders that he's got for us to see in early 2020. So some of them things from your past year, you don't need to look back at it and grab hold of it. Just because that person calls you up doesn't mean you got to answer. Just because that person texts you doesn't mean you got to text back. Just because your boss wanted to cuss you out and did cuss you out doesn't mean you got to respond that way. Let those things that are in the past be in the past because they